Killer in Scrubs, the startling story of Charles Cullen, serial murderer. Charles Cullen killed 40 people and was hell-bent on killing more. He was a trusted healthcare professional, sworn not to harm, but instead used his position as a nurse to torture and kill his patients? This is the story of Charles Edmund Cullen, nurse, caretaker, and monstrous serial killer. Today, Bruce Wayne will delve into the details of Cullen's horrific crimes, leaving you with shock and disbelief. How could one man be responsible for so much tragedy and heartbreak? The answer lies in the mind of a killer, a man who could manipulate and deceive those around him to carry out his deadly plans. But as the case unfolds, you'll also see the heroism of those who worked tirelessly to bring Cullen to justice, risking their safety to stop this monster from claiming more lives. Get ready to be captivated by the gripping and terrifying tale of Charles Edmund Cullen. This case will leave you questioning the very nature of humanity and the depths of evil that some are capable of. On February 22, 1960, Charles Cullen was born in West Orange, New Jersey. He was the youngest of 8 children and was raised in a working-class Catholic home. When Charles was 7 months old on September 17, 1960, his bus driver father, Edmund, passed away. Later, Cullen complained about how awful his childhood had been and how his schoolmates and his sister's boyfriends had harassed him non-stop. He ingested chemicals from a chemistry set to commit his first of several suicide attempts when he was just 9 years old. Florence Cullen, the mother of Cullen, was born in England and immigrated to the U.S. as a war bride following World War II. When Cullen was a senior in high school on December 6, 1977, she was tragically killed in an automobile accident at 55. Cullen recalled his mother's passing as devastating and expressed his disappointment that the hospital had not informed him of her passing immediately and had cremated her body rather than giving it back. Cullen joined the U.S. Navy after graduating from West Orange High School the following year. He was a crew member of the USS Woodrow Wilson submarine. He passed the psychological tests needed for submarine sailors, who were anticipated to spend up to 2 months at a stretch, submerged in a claustrophobic craft, as well as the basic training. As a crew member, controlling the Poseidon missiles on the ship, Cullen advanced to the rank of Petty Officer Second Class. During his time in the Navy, he did not fit in and was ridiculed and hazed by his crewmates. After a year of duty, Cullen's leading petty officer aboard the Woodrow Wilson found him seated at the missile controls, donning scrubs, a surgical mask, and gloves instead of his uniform. Cullen received punishment for his behavior, but he never explained his attire. The Navy transferred Cullen to a less demanding position on the supply ship USS Canopus. Over the following few years, he repeatedly entered the Navy psychiatric facility after making suicide attempts. In 1984, Cullen was medically discharged from the Navy for an unexplained cause. Shortly after being released, Cullen enrolled in the nursing program at Mountainside Hospital in Montclair, New Jersey. He excelled as a student and was chosen as the nursing school's class president and graduated in 1986. After graduation, he worked at St. Barnabas Medical Center's burn unit in Livingston, New Jersey. Cullen, meanwhile, got married to Adrienne Baum in 1987. Later that year, their daughter, the first of 2 girls, was born. However, Cullen's wife grew increasingly alarmed by his strange actions and mistreatment of the household pets. He was also known in his neighborhood for chasing cats at night. She would later request a restraining order against him in 1993 because she thought he might endanger her and their 2 kids. She accused Cullen of burning his daughter's books, spiking people's drinks with lighter fluid, and leaving his girls with a nanny for an entire week. Cullen refuted these assertions, claiming that his wife was being overly dramatic. She insisted in stating that Cullen was mentally ill, but her insistence was ignored. Just 1 year into their marriage, Cullen began his killings at St. Barnabas, which he eventually admitted during his confession. He gave a patient a fatal intravenous medicine overdose on June 11, 1988. He would later acknowledge killing numerous additional patients at St. Barnabas, among them an AIDS patient who passed away after receiving an excessive dosage of insulin. When the hospital administration started looking into the poisoned IV bags in January 1992, Cullen quietly resigned from his job at St. Barnabas. Following the investigation, it was established that Cullen was probably to blame for the hospital's scores of patient fatalities. 1 month after leaving St. Barnabas, Cullen sneaked his way into another job at Warren Hospital in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, where he later killed 3 senior citizens by giving them digoxin overdoses. His last victim, a woman, claimed that she had been injected while she slept by a cunning male nurse. However, just like his wife before, the woman's family members and the hospital staff ignored her concerns as unfounded. After a bitter divorce from his wife, Cullen relocated to a basement flat in Phillipsburg the following year. Later, according to Cullen, he intended to stop working as a nurse in 1993, but was compelled to because of the court's mandated child support payments. Cullen broke into the home of Michelle Tomlinson, a co-worker, in March 1993 while she and her little boy were sound asleep, but he didn't wake them up. Then he began phoning her, leaving messages and following her around town. Michelle became so concerned she contacted the police. Cullen pleaded guilty to trespassing and was placed on a year's probation. One day after his arrest, he attempted suicide. Sadly and unfortunately, he failed and lived to kill again. That spring of the following year, Cullen remained employed by Warren Hospital, slithering into a new job at Hunterdon Medical Center in Flemington, New Jersey. Cullen began a 3-year assignment in the intensive care unit. Years later, during one of his confessions, he insisted that he did not harm anyone throughout his first 2 years at Hunterdon. However, all medical documents had been erased at the time of his arrest in 2003. Using digoxin overdoses again, Cullen confessed to killing 5 people between January and September 1996. Moving from job to job, he next obtained employment at Morristown Memorial Hospital, but was promptly let go due to subpar performance. After 6 months of being jobless, Cullen stopped paying child support. He sought therapy for depression at the emergency room of Warren Hospital and was briefly confined to a mental health facility. Ironically, he had previously worked at Warren Hospital, where he had murdered several patients. Harrowingly, Cullen took a job at the Liberty Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Allentown, Pennsylvania, in February 1998, where he oversaw a ward of patients who needed respirators. He was charged with dosing people when it wasn't scheduled. He lost his job after being discovered that he was carrying syringes into a patient's room, causing the patient to suffer a broken arm. And at Liberty Hospital, Cullen killed again, but incredibly, another nurse was left to bear the misery of being blamed for that death. Cullen worked at EASTON Hospital from November 1998 to March 1999, after leaving Liberty. His latest patient was slain on December 30th, 1998. The coroner found digoxin in the patient's blood in lethal doses. But an internal inquiry at EASTON Hospital was inconclusive. There was no solid proof that Cullen was the killer, even though Cullen had left a trail of bodies wherever he worked. Back then, and even today, due to a national scarcity of nurses, it is not very difficult for nurses to find a job. Back then, Cullen could obtain employment despite his history of mental instability, with little evidence of the shocking number of deaths that occurred while working at several hospitals. Additionally, back then, there were no systems in place for reporting nurses who had issues with their mental health or their work. Hospitals were reluctant to take concrete action against Cullen due to the massive liability worries. How would they explain to the public that a killer was allowed to murder so many victims? Yet again, Cullen began working at a new hospital, the Lehigh Valley Hospital Cedar Crest's burn unit in Allentown, in March 1999. He would immediately murder one patient and attempted to kill a second. A month after voluntarily leaving Lehigh Valley Hospital, he found work in the heart care unit at St. Luke's Hospital in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Cullen killed at least 5 patients over the next 3 years, and it is also known that he attempted to kill 2 more. He attempted suicide on January 11, 2000, burning a charcoal grill in his bathtub to die from carbon monoxide poisoning, but regrettably and unfortunately, he failed. When they detected smoke, his neighbors alerted the police and fire service. Cullen was brought to a hospital and a mental health facility, but returned home afterward. Before a co-worker discovered prescription vials in a trash can, nobody at St. Luke's imagined Cullen was killing people there. The theft was highly unusual because the medications had little value outside the hospital and were not used for recreational drug use. After Cullen had taken the drug, according to an investigation, St. Luke's made him a choice: quit and receive an unfavorable recommendation, or get fired. In June 2002, he gave his notice and was let out of the building. Later, 7 of his co-workers at St. Luke's Hospital informed the district attorney of Lehigh County of their concerns that he had killed victims using medications. Absolutely shocking. Cullen's past was never investigated. And 9 months later, the case was closed due to a lack of evidence. Yet again, Cullen started working at a new hospital, Somerset Medical Center's Critical Care Unit in Somerville, New Jersey, in September 2002. At around that time, he started seeing a local woman, but his depression worsened. By the middle of 2003, Cullen had used digoxin, insulin, and epinephrine to kill at least 13 victims and attempted to kill at least 1 more. He unsuccessfully killed Somerset patient Philip Gregor on June 18, 2003. Gregor was ultimately released and passed away naturally 6 months later. Somerset Medical Center leadership became aware of Cullen's inappropriate activities when he entered the computer records and rooms of patients to whom he was not assigned. According to the hospital's computerized drug dispensing cabinets, he demanded drugs that his patients had yet to be prescribed. He placed numerous orders for drugs. Many were canceled immediately, and innumerable orders were placed minutes apart. The executive director for the New Jersey Poison Information and Education System informed Somerset officials in July 2003 that at least 4 suspected overdoses might have been caused by a worker endangering patients. By the end of October, Cullen had already murdered at least 5 more patients and attempted to murder another. In October 2003, a patient in Somerset passed away from low blood sugar, and the hospital called the New Jersey State Police. The patient was Cullen's last unlucky person. State officials criticized the hospital for failing to report a Cullen-administered non-fatal insulin overdose in August. His career history was investigated, and earlier rumors of his involvement in patient fatalities finally came to light. On October 31, 2003, Somerset fired Cullen, reportedly for making false statements on his application. Amy Lugren, a nurse, called the police after becoming concerned about Cullen's history of drug access and his connections to patient fatalities. Police watched him for several weeks as they conducted their investigation. The investigators gave Nurse Lugren the task of speaking with Cullen while wearing a wire and paying him a visit after work. Police had established sufficient probable cause to make an arrest based on such evidence. On December 12, 2003, Cullen was detained at a restaurant and charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and murder. On December 14th, he confessed to homicide detectives that he killed Father Florian Gall and tried to kill Jin Kwang Han, both Somerset patients. In addition, Cullen admitted to the detectives that over his 16-year tenure, he had killed as many as 40 patients. Cullen admitted guilt in April 2004 before Judge Paul W. Armstrong in a New Jersey court to the lethal injection deaths of 13 patients and the attempted deaths of 2 other patients when he worked at Somerset. Cullen agreed to collaborate with law enforcement as part of his plea deal. if they did not seek the death penalty for his offenses. He entered a guilty plea to the murder of 3 other patients in New Jersey a month later. In an Allentown court in November 2004, Cullen admitted to killing 6 patients and attempting to kill 3 more. He frequently halted the court proceedings and chanted, "Your Honor, you need to step down," insulting the judge. It was mandated that Cullen be tied and gagged. Judge Armstrong in New Jersey sentenced Cullen to 11 consecutive life terms on March 2, 2006. He won't be eligible for parole until June 10, 2403. He is detained in Trenton, New Jersey's New State Prison. Before Lehigh County President Judge William H. Platt, Cullen was taken for a sentencing hearing on March 10, 2006. For 30 minutes, Cullen, unhappy with the judge, continued saying, "Your Honor, you need to step down," until Platt had him bound with duct tape and cloth. Cullen tried to repeat the words even after being gagged. Platt sentenced him to an additional 6 life terms during that hearing. Cullen has been collaborating with law enforcement authorities to find new victims as part of his plea agreement. He admitted to the police that he could not endure seeing or hearing about attempts to save a victim's life. Cullen also claimed that he intentionally overdosed people to end their misery and stop hospital staff from treating them inhumanely. But not all of his victims were dying people. Before Cullen killed them, some, like patient Father Florian Gall, had anticipated making a full recovery. Cullen picked medications like digoxin and insulin, which had little utility outside of a hospital setting and were less likely to draw notice. He chose these drugs rather than employing common painkillers and stimulants, which were more closely monitored by hospitals due to their worth as street narcotics. Investigators' findings refuted Cullen's assertion that he wanted to save patients and that he might have inflicted pain on them without realizing it. Similarly, Cullen admitted to investigators that though he frequently witnessed patients suffering for several days, he always decided to kill them on the spur of the moment. In December 2003, Cullen admitted to police that he had blotted out memories of killing most of his victims and that he spent most of his life in a fog. He claimed that he had forgotten how many he had slain or the reasons behind his selection of them. Cullen vehemently denied committing any murders at a particular facility in several instances. However, he acknowledged being implicated in patient fatalities after reviewing medical documents. Because the medical staff was not required to report any unusual activity and employers had insufficient legal obligations, Cullen moved from facility to facility undetected. Back then, like most states, New Jersey and Pennsylvania only compelled medical facilities to report suspicious deaths in the most severe circumstances, and consequences for failing to do so were minimal. Additionally, several jurisdictions did not grant investigators the legal right to ask about the prior employers of workers, and employers were reluctant to look into situations or provide unfavorable work references for fear of facing legal action. Disturbingly and horrific, detectives and Cullen claim that multiple hospitals harbored suspicions about his injuring or killing people, but did not take the necessary legal measures. The families of his victims sued many of the hospitals where Cullen had worked following his criminal conviction. All out-of-court settlements against the hospitals in New Jersey are contained in sealed files. In several instances, certain employees took it upon themselves to formally try to block Cullen's hiring or have him fired. Some warned their superiors not to hire Cullen by making covert contact with neighboring hospitals or speaking discreetly to them. A nurse who had heard stories about Cullen at Easton Hospital told her co-workers when he started working at Sacred Heart Hospital in Allentown in June 2001, if Cullen was not promptly fired, which he was, the nurses threatened to leave in droves. In response to the Cullen case, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and 35 other states passed new legislation encouraging employers to evaluate employees' performance honestly and offering legal safeguards for disclosing medical errors. Remarkably, the statutes of New Jersey served as a template for those of other states. First, hospitals now have a greater need to report major, avoidable adverse occurrences under the 2004 Patient Safety Act. A supplement to the Patient Safety Act, the 2005 Enhancement Act required hospitals to provide specific information about their personnel to the New Jersey Division of Consumer Affairs. It stipulated that records of patient care-related complaints and disciplinary actions must be preserved for at least 7 years. As we come to the end of this gripping true crime story, one thing becomes abundantly clear. The case of Charles Cullen is a harrowing reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human mind. The crimes committed by Cullen are nothing short of shocking. As a nurse, he was entrusted with the care of some of the most vulnerable members of our society. Still, instead of fulfilling his duties, he used his position of power to carry out a killing spree that spanned over a decade. The number of victims is estimated to be over 40, but the actual number may never be known. One can only imagine the pain and suffering inflicted on the families of those who fell victim to Cullen's twisted desires. They were left with an unimaginable void that could never be filled, a tragedy that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. Spiraling deeper into this case, it becomes abundantly clear that there were numerous missed opportunities to stop Cullen before he could kill again. The system failed in its duty to protect those in its care. It is a sobering thought that must spur us to demand better from those who hold such positions of power and responsibility. We must also remember the bravery and perseverance of those who fought to bring Cullen to justice. It was a long and challenging road, but their dedication and determination ensured he was held accountable for his crimes. However, for many, it remains unsettling that Cullen gets to live in prison while so many died. In the end, the story of Charles Cullen is a chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of holding those in power accountable for their actions. We must learn from this tragedy and work toward a future where such horrors can never happen again. To watch more true medical crime stories, download our Easy Weight Loss TV app to all Google-supported TVs. For those with Amazon Fire Stick and Fire Cube, you can now download our app to all TV brands. On the run? Get Easy Weight Loss for your phone, pad, or download Easy Weight Loss to your PC. With Easy Weight Loss, learn how to lose weight, get in shape, watch medical education videos, true medical crime stories, and more. To stay up to date with the latest true medical crimes stories, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications.